Send it down to the Daily Dodge TV studios with Terry Bell.
Welcome, everybody, to today's edition of Community Comment. Our guests are Patrick Lutz and Kurt Sampson of the Dodge County Historical Society, and we're going to be talking about all their great work today. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
And thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
And we invite all of you listening to be a part of the show. If you have a question or a comment, you can call or text 920-887-9595, or you can call the WBEV studio line at 885-4446. Well, Kurt, we talked to you a few weeks ago about the Persia Mammoth, but we're glad to have you back. We're going to be talking about the Historical Society's work in general and what it's been doing for many, many years. First of all, and doesn't matter who starts, how long has the Historical Society been around?
Well, it's been around since 1938. So it started in the downtown area. There's a building that houses Gergen Law Office, and it's a three-story building. It's one of the more famous buildings in Beaver Dam as far as the everything that went on there. It was a town hall on the third floor, and on the second floor there were city offices. The Daily Citizen started there, and also the Historical Society started there. They had just like one room in 1938. And from there, then they moved to the train station, which is the Chamber now. And then in 1985, we moved into the Williams Free Library once the new library was constructed.
For people who aren't familiar with the mission of an historical society, get us up to speed on that, please.
All right, yeah. It's education is the number one thing. So when people come in, we try to have signage and help them. We want to be able to interpret the displays. So we don't want to just have things that people look at and think, well, what is this? And so signage is really important, and we've improved on that over the years. But education is number one, and then really preserving all of these wonderful artifacts they have. And I just want to mention, back in 1938, they were able to keep, and people gave them things from the earliest settlers. And we have some of those things on display, which we're really proud of. But that's probably the two major things is the education part, and Kurt can talk a little bit about that because we have student groups that come in. But just preserving the things that we have at the building, and outreach is another newest thing for us. And we were always there, but we didn't really reach out enough to other groups in the community. So now we're very connected with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Beaver Dam Area Community Theater, with the Watermark, with the Recreation Center, with the City of Beaver Dam, and it goes on and on and on, because we need those people to help us with all of the different activities, because we've really increased on the number of activities and things that we do. And so it's not just, again, as I said, a bunch of old stuff on the shelf. Besides preserving all those things, we want people in the building for many different reasons. And I'll turn that over to Kurt and talk about some of our activities.
Yeah, and one of our other partners that we work pretty closely with now too is also the public library, with doing a lot of events with them as well. And like Patrick mentioned, our number one goal is educational outreach, but also, like he mentioned, to help preserve and disseminate that information about the history of Dodge County and Beaver Dam, and specifically. Many of the other communities in the county have their own historical societies as well. And we've also tried to take an initiative more so lately to try to branch out to work more closely with some of those historical societies as well, and to reinvigorate some of the meetings that we used to have for county meetings, working with some of the other historical societies. But at the Historic Society, we really do provide a number of different things to patrons that might come into the museum. First and foremost, we have the museum itself and its exhibits. We're open Wednesday through Saturday from 1 to 4 to the general public, or by special appointment through me being the curator at the museum. We offer genealogical research, which is probably our number one inquiry from the general public, people coming in looking for information about past relatives, historic buildings in town, general history of the area, and how that might relate to them and their families of the past. We also offer curation in the physical form of curating artifacts and also assorted archival materials. The bulk of our collection, besides the existing exhibits, is our archives. And we've put a lot of money into the archives over the last decade or so to make sure that that is top-notch and organized and curated professionally with a lot of that, historical documentations from the history of the city, the county, and people, places, and things. We have a very large, the bulk of that would be photograph collection of people, places, and things of the past in Beaver Dam. We also have most of the old plat maps that are very popular with people to do research on family homesteads and things like that. We have a very involved and active board of directors, and each one of those people bring a lot of different types of expertise to the board in a variety of different ways. We also, having me on staff as curator, I think I was probably the first truly educated curator that the Historic Society ever had, being that I have a master's degree in museum studies and archaeology. So we do offer expert artifact identification at the museum. We offer special monthly programs and speakers, which we're in the midst of right now with our winter speakers program that we'll talk about. We have several upcoming events that we consider annual events now, which is our annual Ghost Story Festival, which we work with the community theater very closely.
Oh, fun.
We also have our annual Lawn Party, and those are all, of course, during the Peonies Festival coming up in second week of June 12th and 13th. We have our annual fundraiser, which is the Haunted History Tour of the Old City Cemetery, which is usually in October. And we're working to put that together right now. We'll have more information about that coming forward. We also offer a wide variety of different types of brochures, walking tours that Patrick actually does a lot of the walking tours. We offer brochures of historic walking tours of the downtown area, which consist of a half-mile and a mile tour that we worked with the high school students to put that brochure together. We have a revamped website and social media Facebook page, which we're very active on. And we also just reinvigorated our newsletter, which we'll be putting out at least a couple times a year. We just put our most recent newly revised edition out a couple of weeks ago. And we're having another one coming up here in the late spring pretty soon.
Very good, and we will have a lot to talk about, but first we need to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
94.53 WBEV. In the Daily Dodge TV studios, here's Terry Bell.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you, everyone, for being with us today. We're talking to Patrick Lutz and Kurt Sampson of the Dodge County Historical Society. If you have any questions about Dodge County's past and what we're doing to preserve it, we invite you to join the program. You can call us or text us at 920-887-9595, or you can call the WBEV studio line at 885-4446. Oh, in addition to all the things we discussed in the first segment, what other kinds of services does the Historical Society provide for the public?
Well, as Kurt mentioned, we do tours, and we've done many tours over the years, and we will actually make a tour for a particular group. We've done medical tours, so it was like medical history of Beaver Dam, sports history. Mainly, it's the downtown area. We have a tour that we call the Big Block, where we do a tour of all the existing buildings that are there, and then pictures of buildings that have been torn down over the years. And then we have some walking tours that we provide also. But the services are a big part, and as Kurt mentioned, having the programming, because the programming ties so well with what we do, but also the outreach part is talking about Beaver Dam in general. Two major things we're working on right now are why did people come to Beaver Dam? And Kurt and I spent the whole afternoon yesterday going over all this information about, how did people get here? Because why did they choose to come to Beaver Dam? Because, excuse me, there was nothing here. The lake was more like a marsh, so it was very similar to the Horicon Marsh. And the major reason they came here is because they knew they could provide or could develop a dam and then dam up the water and then start a mill. So that was, that was once they got here. So that was one of the reasons why they chose the location. But we're tracing it all the way back to settlers who came from Europe, where they came from Germany and Norway and Poland and Ireland and all the ways that they got here. So, they would leave their homes back in their home country, and it might take them 6 months to a year just to get to the United States, and then they had to get from a port, eastern port, and then find a way to get to, Wisconsin. So, through the Great Lakes. So we're working on a presentation. So that's another service that we provide is presentations on historic events, but also, as I said, just history in general that seems to be lost in time that people just don't often think about. Think about Beaver Dam is here, but it started with basically nothing being here except the Native Americans who passed through the area.
Right. So what was it that the European settlers were looking for here? Economic opportunity, the dam, and creating a mill, for one, I'm sure. I hear a lot of people that, people from different parts of Europe would settle in different parts of North America based on, the terrain reminded them of home. What were the factors that brought the European settlers here?
Many times it's because they could actually own a piece of land. Mm-hmm. And one of the problems in Europe at the time is some areas was still a feudal system where you might have one person that owned a huge estate, and there were small farms. And what would happen is the oldest son in the family was the first person to he would own the land after the father passed away. And the other siblings were kind of left to, okay, what are we going to do? So as these farms kept being broken up into smaller and smaller sections, people were left with pretty much nothing. And so they heard from families who had migrated to the United States, and they said, there's land. It's not free, but it's cheap land where you can come here and you can actually own a piece of your own property.
You mentioned the walking tour, and I'm curious to know, are there buildings that we drive past and walk past every day that most of us maybe have no idea the significant events in the past that happened inside?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's hard for me to do a tour that's less than an hour and a half because once I get going and start talking about all the buildings, and people who lived here for all their lives don't remember or they just weren't aware. The building we were talking about is where the Historical Society started. That was the town hall, which retail on the first floor, second floor offices, and the third floor was a huge open hall where plays were performed, guest speakers. There would be a Lyceum series where they'd have guest speakers, several times a month. Mark Twain spoke in that hall. So there's a plaque on the outside of it. There's a book written about that building, actually, called Town Hall Tonight. So when I walk up and down Front Street, I can stop and talk about each building at length. And it's hard, like I said, it's hard to do a tour and do it justice with less than an hour and a half. But by the time we get to an hour and a half, I can tell people are getting a little bit tired and they've had enough. So,
Okay. All right. Yeah, so we have all of that, and the people from Beaver Dam who contributed things. We had Dean Robbins, an author who's written a book about people with ties to Wisconsin, and he talked about people from Beaver Dam like Fred McMurray, and maybe up the road a bit, Gina Rowlands, and just. Tell us about some of the people who are from Beaver Dam who
Sure.
really contributed to the
Sure,
world.
I'm going to talk about one, and then I'm going to turn it over to you then. Because besides memorabilia that we got from McKinstry's, and we were just talking about that during break, we were so lucky to get pictures and artifacts and actually pieces of furniture from McKinstry's. As they closed the store, Rick Fiegel, who's been a friend of mine for years, said, "Hey, we got stuff that you guys should have." And when we went down there, it was like, wow, we had a treasure trove of materials, and we're going to be developing, starting today, actually, starting to put the display together that will honor McKinstry's.
Yeah, it's amazing, I think, an opportunity for an historical society to have a business in town that just closed a short time ago, but has ties all the way back to frontier days.
Sure. But getting back to McKinstry's, Randall McKinstry, he was very good friends with Fred McMurray. They went to high school together, and John, who was the last of the McKinstrys in the city, he made sure that they had memorabilia for Fred McMurray hanging in the store, and they were proud to show that off, and certainly it was a good thing because some people have forgotten about Fred McMurray or they've never heard of him, but he was a huge star, made hundreds of performances in movies, and he was on Broadway, and his television show My Three Sons, and it just goes on and all the things that he did. And he never forgot Beaver Dam. In fact, he even mentions it sometimes in the movies and that he was in. And so that's only one of the famous people. But we have a wall of fame in the museum, and so when people come in, we point that out, check out the Wall of Fame, and so I'm going to turn it over to Kurt now to mention.
Yeah, it's interesting. Beaver Dam, really unlike a lot of other communities in the state, is kind of this weird area where there several famous people have come right out of Beaver Dam. He had mentioned, the McKinstry family with their ties to Fred McMurray, but we also have a lot of other historical figures that a lot of people wouldn't know about unless you just studied the history or maybe stopped in. One of the most interesting ones is a man named William Coxshall, who was a Civil War soldier, who was actually one of the unwilling executioners of the Lincoln conspirators during the Lincoln assassination out in Virginia. And we also have several famous athletes. Matty Horn, 5-time world champion female speed skater from right here from Beaver Dam, that literally learned how to skate right out here on Beaver Dam Lake and on a pond by her house. We have Pinks Hawley, who was a very well-known, famous baseball pitcher for the New York Yankees back around the turn of the last century. And he also played for Pittsburgh Pirates, I believe. Yeah, Pittsburgh Pirates. We have a very famous science fiction writer, Raymond Gollum, who really was one of the foremost pulp fiction science fiction writers back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And George Lucas himself has even said in an interview that I saw one time that he was actually influenced by the works of Raymond Gollum when he was developing the script for Star Wars. And Gollum was interesting because one of the things that he did in science fiction writing was he was one of the first writers to portray aliens as actually friendly as opposed to being adversaries in some type of a novel. We also have a famous woman from Beaver Dam named Mary Spellman, who in 1933, at the age of was 73, I think it was.
She was elderly.
She had taught school, starting in a one-room schoolhouse in the countryside outside of Beaver Dam, at the age of 15 or 16. Taught school in the public school system here for 52 years. And then right when she retired, at the time, Beaver Dam had a socialist mayor named Ray Weaver, who was a World War I veteran, but his policies at that time were not very popular. And some of her, Mary Spellman's former students, convinced her to run for mayor at the age of 73. And she was actually one of the very first elected female mayors in the United States of a town of this size in this area. And then she ended up serving 2 terms here. And who else is there?
Well, we have.
Well, why don't we hold on to that
Okay,
thought, because
we'll do
we do
that.
have to take a break.
See how
for the
easy it is to
news.
keep going? And
It is. There's a lot to talk about for sure, and we'll get right back to it. We're going to listen to the news here for a minute and be right back. You're listening to Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Thank you so much, Jake, and welcome back, everybody. This is Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV. Our guests today are Patrick Lutz and Kurt Sampson of the Dodge County Historical Society, talking about all the great ways that they keep the history of Dodge County alive for us to appreciate where we've been and where we're going. If you have a question or a comment for Patrick or Kurt, we invite you to call or text 920-887-9595 or call the WBEV studio line at 885-4446. One of the things that you're involved in, and I think is probably very important for the history of Beaver Dam, is an archaeological expedition going to happen right here at Swan Park in Beaver Dam.
Right. Swan Park is kind of our, well, we've kind of adopted it. Swan Park is a park that we spend a lot of time at. We've done lots of research. As I was talking earlier in the program, that's one of the things we do on a continuing basis. And I'm working on a project with a library and using their program called newspapers.com. And it covers, it's a website that you can go to, and it has all of the Beaver Dam papers on it. One of the things about Swan Park, and it was Beaver Dam's first park for one thing, but we tell people all the time it's one of the most historic sites in all of Wisconsin because of all the things that went on there over the years. And new things are going to be going on this year, and I'm going to have Kurt talk about that in just a minute, but we're going to be doing an archaeological dig at the park that will be open to the public, and people can actually participate in that. But I'm just going to talk about the park for just a couple of minutes. The park started off as a pasture, but it had a spring, a mineral spring on the south, it would be the southeast corner of the park, and that park was, or that spring, was known by the Native Americans for literally thousands of years that passed through the area. And it was even considered a religious site for them. And it was a place where they would they'd stop warring if they happened to be warring tribes, but it was a place where they would meet, and it was agreed upon that this was a place where they would visit the water, they worshiped the water, and drank of the water, and they felt it had curative powers. So in 1879, Dr. Swan came. So it was Swan Park. It was his park originally because he developed it into a health spa. And back in 1879, there's some stories that have come down through the years, and one of the things I'm working on is to kind of fill in the holes because we have a number of narratives about Swan Park, but none of them are complete. And there are sometimes whole decades where there's nothing mentioned about what went on there. What I found by going through all these newspapers is something was going on almost every year. Might be one year where there wasn't, but then a whole new thing would be happening at the park. So the park was a health spa, and again, we could have a whole program just on that, but many people know about that in Beaver Dam. But it was there was a swimming pool there at one time that was put in, a pond for, there were lagoons there at one time, and when it was a health spa, lagoons that are there today are much smaller, but at one time they were big enough where you could take a canoe or a rowboat, and there was also a 4-story hotel in the park. So what we're going to be doing is doing an archaeological dig in the area where the hotel was, but also where there was a bathhouse and also a caretaker's cottage.
Help us out, especially someone like me. I'm a relative newcomer to Beaver Dam. Where was the hotel?
Okay, the hotel was on the west side of the park where the playground equipment is today. Okay. And there's a stone wall around it, but that stone wall was actually not built for the playground. It was built for a deer park that was there at one time. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole nother history of parks in the early 1900s wanting to have these little zoos, and that was kind of a movement all across. And I was talking about these movements because there was the Swan Park after it was sold, because the whole idea of the health spa, it was only open from 1880 to 1892. That's when it closed, and it just wasn't a moneymaker. Dr. Swan put $30,000 into it, which today would have been like $1 million or more, and it just didn't make any money because the hotel was there, and they tried to attract people from all over the United States to come. Now, people say, well, why would they come to Beaver Dam? But there was also Waukesha and what was the town near Cedarburg, where there was the health
Oh, the
spa.
Hilgen Springs.
Yeah,
Hilgen Springs.
Right.
and-
So that was kind of a movement all across. And Waukesha was a whole town of springs. There were 70 identified springs, and it was a massive movement all across the United States. But what I'm going to talk about quickly is the reason they were popular is because these springs, they were clean water. And that was the major reason people would come to the springs and stay at the hotel and drink of this water. And it was basically, if they stayed for a week or 2 weeks, it was the best water they had drunk in their entire lives many times. So after drinking it for 2 weeks and only that water, they would feel better. So they'd go and say, hey, go to Beaver Dam and drink that water, and you're going to feel better. So what we're going to do is try to find some artifacts from the 1880s, early 1890s. So I'm going to turn it over to Kurt now.
Yeah, like Patrick said, even in the 1870s and 1880s, people were suffering from a lot of stomach ailments from drinking bad water.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. So coming to those health spas and spending a week there would oftentimes, give them those health benefits and things. So the gist of the archaeology dig is to make it a public event where we invite the general public to come out, especially kids, really kids of all ages, but younger kids, elementary school age kids, high school kids, whoever. And we'll do some shovel testing to see if we can identify some possible features before we put in what we call 2 meter by 2 meter excavation units. And we'll probably have at least 3 of those excavation units in various different spots around the area that we want to excavate. And then that's just what we'll do. We'll just systematically excavate like we do in archaeology. And we'll invite the public to actually do that, to do the work so they can get some hands-on experience seeing what an archaeological dig actually entails. And being that there is a very long prehistoric and historic occupation of that park, we're hoping to find, like Patrick said, some possible artifacts, or maybe the foundation of the original buildings that were there, like the bathhouse, or if there was foundations at all. It's just an opportunity for us to do some public outreach with some, educational programming, and that's geared towards getting people involved with the historic site.
Literally hands-on. Now,
Yeah.
that's very exciting. When is this again?
It's going to be Saturday, May 16th.
Okay.
We'll probably begin, I want to say, 10 o'clock in the morning.
9 and 10.
And we're kind of leaving it open-ended when that's going to end. Sometimes it kind of depends on what you find, like in the past when I've worked on archaeological digs, you might start at 10 o'clock, but if you find something and you're excavating, you can't just stop. You got to kind of excavate until it kind of bottoms out, so to speak. So if there are archaeological features that we find, we might have to stay out there a little longer in the afternoon, but we can certainly cover those excavation units up and maybe come back, the next day or whatever. But, being how the soil horizons are in that park and that it has been disturbed over the years, it'll be interesting to see, how deep that a horizon of soil is that, we're more likely to find historic artifacts in that part of the excavation. So
Well, it's interesting, I think, bringing the public in. When I think of an archaeological dig, I think of highly skilled people with advanced degrees using very delicate and precise work. How does the public do this successfully?
Well, I'm going to have some of my archaeology buddies there, at least a couple of them, one for each of us to at least monitor each excavation unit. And it's actually very simple. Once you can, I had to go through an entire summer of archaeological field school, but simply digging a 2 meter by 2 meter excavation unit, you basically are just going down in 10 centimeter increments. It's a very simple line level measuring system, and you just take those down until, if you come upon a feature or whatever. And there are certain types of archaeological field paperwork that we fill out for each level, which documents what we're finding at each level. And we can take some photographs and things. And being that this is a public property, we actually had to get permission from the state archaeologist and the State Historical Society to do this excavation. And it, believe it or not, Swan City Park is also considered a catalog burial ground because they have found human remains in the park, some of them ancient and some of them historic. And as a result of that, you have to get certain permits from the State Historical Society to conduct an archaeological excavation in a public land like that. So we've secured those permits and given the state justification for our want to excavate. And so, yeah, we'll be ready to roll that morning, and there'll be some more information coming out in the next couple of months as we get closer to that archaeological dig. And yeah, we're hoping that the public will come out and participate.
That's very exciting. We need to take one quick break here, and we'll be right back. You are listening to Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Really quick.
Thank you very much, Jake, and welcome back, everyone. We still have a few minutes left, but plenty of time for you to join the conversation if you'd like. Call or text 920-887-9595, or you can call the WBEV studio line at 885-4446. Patrick, you had some more interesting information about Swan Park to share.
Sure, there's a lot going on there, and one of the neat things that's happened over the last 5 years is we've installed 9 plaques, actually one more to go. So we have 8 installed and one more to go. We'll have 9, and they are historic markers that show what was in the park over the years, going all the way back to the 1880s, and highlighting such things as there was a zoo at one time in the park, and the comfort station there was built in the 1920s. It's neat to just walk around the park and look at all of these plaques and just try to imagine what it was like back at that time.
Certainly. Yeah, I've seen some really beautiful old photographs. It's just, it really does put you in touch with that link to the past. Mm-hmm. Certainly. Well, there's a lot happening at with the Historical Society today that we want to talk about.
Well, we are in the midst of our winter speaking series right now. We have a couple of speakers every month, and so we'll begin again coming on up in March. Our next speaker is going to be on March. They're all on Saturdays, by the way.
Okay.
All Saturdays, and you can find that information about these lectures on our website and on our Facebook page, and by coming into the museum. But we have a number of speakers coming up over the next couple of months. 2 in March, we're going to welcome back Herman Bender on March 7th, and he'll be doing an interesting program about called Traversing the Divide, the Milwaukee River Horicon Marsh Trails. And what that basically is in a nutshell is where the Horicon Marsh sits in relation to the Milwaukee River just to the east. There is an ancient trail system that ran between the Milwaukee River going towards the Horicon Marsh and the escarpment, and it's been actually documented, and they actually mark these trails with prehistoric stone cairn piles and marker trees and all sorts of things. And Herman Bender has been documenting that information about that trail system. Another one coming up in March will be on the 14th, the following Saturday. All these programs begin at 1 o'clock, by the way. They're open and free to the public. And on the 14th, we'll have Edward Langer, who is associated with the Kleinman Township, and he wrote a book recently called Grounded in the Past and Looking to the Future, the History of the Town and Village of Kleinman, Wisconsin, and he'll come and present some information about his book. And the last time I was here, I think we talked a little bit about a book that I recently published with a friend of mine, Dr. Gary Meyer, and that's with our Effigy Mound books called Patterns in Effigy Mound Groups as Symbol Systems. And we're going to do a public presentation at the public library in March, on Wednesday, March 25th from 6 to 8 p.m., and that's open to the public as well. And that's going to be in their temporary building right now down the street here. Mm-hmm. And then, as Patrick mentioned earlier, 2 more lectures we got coming up. One that will be really interesting, I think, is we'll welcome back Peter Schrake of the Circus World Museum in Baraboo. He is the curator there, and he's going to be doing a presentation called Bareback Riders and Educated Elephants, Wisconsin's Amazing Circus Heritage. And he'll talk about, like Patrick mentioned, what it was like for these small towns, including Beaver Dam back in the day, to have these circuses come through their communities. And if you come into the Dodge County Historic Society, you can see some exhibits on display right now that talk about the rich circus history that we have in Beaver Dam. Mm-hmm. So that'll be a really interesting presentation. And then another one coming up on April 25th, which is also a Saturday. We'll welcome for the first time Adam Novi, who's the executive director of the old historic Indian Agency House in Portage, which is where the in 1832 was the agency house by Fort Winnebago, where the Indians, it was kind of like an embassy between the U.S. government and the Native Americans that were in this area at the time. And that's where they would go annually for their annuity that they would get paid through the government through some of the land treaties that were signed and things. And Adam will come and discuss the history of the Indian Agency House at Fort Winnebago. So, yeah, leading all the way up into May, before our archaeology dig, we have several of these public lectures coming up again, and they've been very successful this year. We've been averaging anywhere from 35 to 40 people for nearly all of our lectures, and so I invite the public to come out, and you can see we have a wide range of different topics for different people's interests and stuff.
Oh my gosh, yeah! When you mentioned the speaker coming in from Baraboo, I'm always fascinated by the idea of how we entertained ourselves before mass media and all these traveling performers and local community theaters who did that job that our screens do for us now.
There were actually a couple of circuses that were based in Beaver Dam as well.
Is that right?
Right.
And tell me more.
Well, they were called dog and pony shows, and that's exactly what they had.
That's where the
dog
term
and
come
pony.
from.
Exactly. Yep. And then they practiced in some of the empty lots downtown, and then it would take off. And
right next to our building, they did one right where the police station is now.
Is that right?
In the parking lot there. That's where the old YMCA building used to be, the original YMCA from way back. Mm-hmm. And they used to do one right in the parking lot right there.
Yeah, and there was a city circus, and
they would
bring in professional performers, and that was a really big dance. So there's a huge connection with circuses in Beaver Dam, and I'm really anxious to hear the speaker from Circus World.
Oh, absolutely. I'm also just fascinated by, I like little bits of information. There's always some town, it seems, mentions that, this is a theater where the Marx Brothers once performed, or W.C. Fields, and it's great to keep those buildings and that connection to the past, keep it going and keep it, relevant. And
Yeah, we're thankful for having this opportunity, and hopefully we'll be back in the spring to talk about our Ghost Story Festival, which is really a big deal in June.
we haven't even touched on that.
And also we have our big lawn party, and so we'll be back, and we're excited, and we've got all those things in the works. So
We'll be excited to have you. Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Patrick Lutz and Kurt Sampson, it's been a great hour. It flew right by. We'll have you again back soon.
Thank you
Thank
much.
you.
And thank you for listening to Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.